we're going to transition now to the main event, which is this week's movie review. And we've decided to tackle the Suicide Squad for very specific reasons, right? So before we get started, just to give you an idea of, if you've been hiding under a rock somewhere, what the Suicide Squad is actually about. According to IMDb, it says that the government sends the most dangerous supervillains in the world, Bloodsport, Peacemaker, King Shark, Harley Quinn, and others, to the remote, enemy-infused island of Corto Maltese. Armed with high-tech weapons, they trek through the dangerous jungle on a search and destroy mission with only Colonel Rick Flag on the ground to make them behave.
It's a better version of a movie that came out 5 years ago.
Yes.
Yes.
My first critique just of that synopsis is the world's most dangerous supervillains.
Right. They forgot Captain Boomerang. They forgot. No, I'm kidding. But
Yeah, I mean, yeah.
Before
I think you need at least a Superman villain on the crew if you're going to call that one.
Good point. Yeah, but
Just
before
one.
we get started, we want to make sure that we set the table. We're going to do this in two parts. The first part, there is no spoilers, so there's no danger. You can stick around. If you've not watched the movie, stick around and listen to the conversation. At some point, we'll put up the red flag and say, okay, from this point on, spoilers abound, and that's the point where you can stop it and go watch the movie and come back and finish it up afterwards. But for now, no spoilers allowed. So
I think the spoiler-free part's going to be shorter because there's a lot of spoiler stuff that we need to talk about in this movie.
More than likely. That's probably going to be the same with every episode that we do. But let's just get the initial reactions. Nick, what was your first thought when you saw The Suicide Squad?
I liked it. I have seen the original that this one is kind of, and it's funny because this movie is really like it's a remake, but it's not. It's like a sequel and a remake. And if you've seen the first movie, I think this one's actually a little bit more enjoyable because they do some things in the beginning of the movie that are kind of a sort of subtle yet not so subtle, like nod to the first movie in certain ways. But overall, I liked it. I enjoyed. I mean, I loved Cena. I loved King Shark. I loved like all of the characters that were new that they brought to it. I loved that they kept who everybody universally agreed was the best part of the first movie, which was Margot Robbie as Harley Quinn. I liked Idris Elba. The tone of it, I liked. You know, the violence was like it's very violent, but it's like cartoony violent. Like the context of the violence is funny, and I like that. James Gunn is a very talented dude. I'm glad they put it in his hands because like I big fan of Guardians of the Galaxy, and being a filthy comic book casual, before I saw Guardians of the Galaxy, I didn't know who the Guardians of the Galaxy were, nothing about it. But when I saw Guardians of the Galaxy at the time, that became my favorite Marvel movie at that time, just because I loved what he did with it. I thought the tone was great, his use of music. Yeah, I thought it was great. Rotten Tomatoes, I think, gave it like a 91. I don't know if I'd put it quite that high. That's a little generous, I think, but I think it was a definite improvement over the first one. Like, you know, I'd give it a solid 8 out of 10, I think.
All right, fair enough. Tom, do you agree?
I freaking love this movie. Let me just say,
don't hold back,
for,
okay?
for a couple of different reasons that I'll get into really heavily in the spoiler part. But first off, I'm a James Gunn fan, and probably one of my favorite movies of his is actually Super, a movie that he did before where it was a superhero movie, but the fact that it was this unknown superhero that he told this whole other story with, and was so visual for such a smaller movie that what it was, that really let me know that when he got the Suicide Squad, that really excited me with the fact that he was actually at Warner Brothers. Because here's the one thing: for all the things that I don't like about Warner Media, and as a Snyder fan, I'm very, very vocal about them on that.
If anybody's Facebook friends with Tom that listens to this, you can attest to that fact.
I just me and Warner Media owes me an apology letter. Anyway,
You might want to have a seat while you wait for that.
Yeah, they've made that very clear. So, and I'll actually get to my point on that later about Suicide Squad too. But here, my thing is that they have this thing over there where they just really kind of take the reins off of the directors until they get into post. Do you see what I'm saying? They will really let a director go make the movie they want it to make. Then they'll bring it back and they'll be like, you can't do that. And then they give them something different that they chopped up, and then people crap on it. And then, but here's the thing, I don't feel that anybody stopped James Gunn from making the movie he wanted to make this time around. You see what
Mm.
I'm saying? Like if anything, I don't feel like they really learned their lesson from the Snyder Cut situation. But I think what they've decided was they knew they weren't going to let this become another Snyder Cut, Ayer Cut, something where they felt where fans complained and felt that the director wasn't able to give them their vision. So that this way, fail or success, and we'll talk about that in a minute, um, James Gunn's movie got to be seen. And I personally think it was very good. I think it'll be one of the highlights of John Cena's career. I think it's the
Yes,
best movie that John Cena's been in, as far as I'm concerned.
I agree with that.
Um,
I agree with
and
that.
I think it will be a cult favorite. Go down as that. As there are a lot of DC films that are cult favorites. They just aren't,
Will's face.
hits. So I know. Let's get ready for it. Let's get ready for it. Will, my friend,
Let's hear the
who
dissenting opinion
disagrees
from
with me
Chief
so
Justice
often,
Will Rodriguez.
Chief
All right.
Justice Will
All right.
Rodriguez. Yes.
So I will
Dissenting
say, I will admit that I probably need to go watch this movie again
Okay.
because I don't know what the fuck you guys are talking about.
I knew it. I knew it.
I mean, so I too am a fan of his, of John Cena and the director, but
Mm-hmm.
I was not prepared for what I saw. Right. So first,
Okay.
I was a fan of the Suicide Squad, the original run, the Ostrander run in the comics. So I'm a fan of Colonel Flag and all those cast of characters from the original run. So I was excited to have an actual filmmaker who did such a great job with the Guardians of the Galaxy, bring them to life on screen, because to Nick's point, we had one before and it was an abomination. So
One
here
great.
I am, really excited, and that might be part of the problem because I was so excited. Same thing happened to me when I first watched the 1985 or 86, whatever it was, or 88 Batman with Michael Keaton. I was
89 Batman. I'm
89.
sorry.
Yeah.
You didn't wait a minute. Well, this is going to hold on. I just want to prepare myself. I need a second. Okay. All right, go ahead, Will.
I was such a Batman fan at the time that I was so stoked for this movie that the first time I saw it, I was severely disappointed because it could not ever live up to my expectations. Then I went back and watched it a second time and fell absolutely head over heels in love with it.
Thank God. Okay, we got there.
All right.
Okay.
We got there.
We don't need to do a divorce just yet. Okay. Now, I'm assuming the same things happened with me with the Suicide Squad. I was so pumped to watch this movie that I was so drastically disappointed from what I saw. And another reason why that could have been is because I was sitting next to my wife while we were watching it. And every time someone's face blew off, she like, oh, wow, oh, I can't. So
Yeah.
it's hard to enjoy a movie when your wife is struggling with it. When she says, I don't think I can watch this. And
That's
the fact
fair.
is, I don't laugh a lot at movies unless she's watching them with me. So I take her to all the Marvel movies because if you know my wife, man, her laugh could be heard 3 miles away. She makes that whole experience so much better for me. So I knew this dude was directed Guardians of the Galaxy. I knew this thing was going to be funny. I wanted her there so that I could laugh. And when she turns to me, she goes, I don't think I can watch this. It devastated me because I was so desperately wanted to watch this movie.
Yeah.
Then my whole mindset got thrown off.
That's a tough one. When you're with your wife, your significant other, whoever, and like you really want to share that experience and they just aren't feeling it. Yeah, that's tough. That's a tough dynamic and vibe to overcome.
But I gotta ask. I want to ask real quick. Have you seen Super, Will?
I have.
You have.
I have. Yep.
So, as someone who's seen Super,
I thought
and
he
you
had
remember how
graduated beyond
violent.
it. I thought he'd moved
Graduated? No, he just got hired by Disney. You can't do that over there.
I mean, I had hoped. I just like his tweets had mellowed out. I was hoping that his directing had mellowed out
Well,
too.
he didn't. Well, he didn't make any any of those jokes or anything in it. Like I'm saying, what the violent part though, I knew the moment they said James Gunn Suicide Squad, I already know. Well, if you know Suicide Squad, that means at some point somebody's head is going to explode.
Sure.
Period.
No, I got that. Yeah.
We already know that.
Slipknot.
Now
Right?
we know there's so many ways to do that. But if you've seen Super, you already know how James Gunn is going to do it.
Yes.
Okay, you already know how he's going to do it.
And I was just as uncomfortable watching Super as I was at Suicide Squad.
I agree, but my thing is this: it's kind of like when you prescribe to watch a show called Dark, and then it gets dark and goes there. Okay, you can't sign up for James Gunn's The Suicide Squad, and then when he's James Gunn, you go, man, I don't know why.
Well, and also it's rated R, right? Like
it's very rated.
Yeah, so it's like what it's rated going into it.
Fair points. All of those are fair points, but I was not prepared. The James Gunn, the last James Gunn that I saw was Guardians of the Galaxy. So that's kind of what I was expecting. And I was all like, yeah, baby. Even though Suicide Squad, the comics, was not like Guardians of the Galaxy. It was not lighthearted. It was not funny. It was not fun. It was hardcore. So he actually did probably the better Suicide Squad than I was expecting, but I wasn't prepared for it.
Sure.
So
yeah, it's funny because Lindsay Lohan used to work for Disney too, Will.
I see a pattern emerging.
We know how that turned out.
I'm just saying. I see all of your points, and I see what you're saying. And what I think really, I think you nailed what you probably should do, and that's watch the movie now with this fresh lens. You see it with a new lens, kind of like how Nick, came back and fell in love with Chinatown. I think if you watch it with the right since now you know what you're getting yourself into.
And I purposely did not watch it again prior to our recording this because I wanted to give my initial.
No, I appreciate that. It's more entertaining.
Now I can go back and I can come back and report on it after I've watched it again, because it's happened many, many times where I will watch a film and my anticipation is so through the roof that I'm just like disappointed. And I come back and watch it a second time and go, what was wrong with me?
That's how I felt about Spider-Man Homecoming.
Interesting.
For me, I just was like, which is funny because I really like Tom Holland as Spider-Man now. I really like everything there. But when I saw the first one, I was like, that's fine. That was fine. I guess that was fine.
I think
my expectations of it were so, because the Amazing Spider-Man movies were just at best they were pretty mediocre.
They were fine.
2 was pretty.
You want to talk about fine? The Amazing Spider-Man movies, they were fine.
They never got above fine. Everything hit fine, and that was the plateau.
They were they were the vacation friends of the superhero genre.
It was.
That's exactly it.
They were in color. Everything was in focus.
Right. Everything was in focus. It was technically sound.
Yes.
Anyway. Though they had pacing issues. But if you went to the Sam Raimi Spider-Man movies, they were so great that I was thinking an idea that, the first 2.
Yeah,
the third movie, here's how good Sam Raimi's first 2 Spider-Man movies were, that they kind of get done the same way The Matrix does for me, where that first movie was so good that I just roll everything that happened into those movies into just The Matrix as a franchise. And then people go, yeah, but what about these movies? I'm like, yeah, I know they suck, but the good things out of those belong with The Matrix.
As a sci-fi fan, I take offense to that because I actually, all 3 Matrix movies were totally different. If you take them just as standalone science fiction movies, I loved the third one. That's the one that people hate the most, and I loved it. I thought it was fantastic.
Why, Will, you don't understand. Here's the thing. Here's the crazy thing, all right? Even when you and I agree on an unpopular opinion, right? Because I'm going to say something crazy here in a second. I love the Matrix movies. My favorite one is the second.
What?
I love Reloaded.
You like the weird rave in hell scene while Neo and Trinity are like,
you know why? My
sex
very first, honestly, my very first lesson in film appreciation was about that scene. And not, and it was because they were like, what is the point? Well,
You would
it
need to
was,
teach me how to appreciate it as well.
let
So
me explain. Let me
I
explain. Let me explain. Let me explain. Because I love that scene. I love that scene. I can't bring that scene up and not defend it. Here's the thing. There's no other point in the entire Matrix trilogy where you ever see the people of Zion actually enjoying being alive. That is the only point that happens. Otherwise, the life that you see Zion has, what the hell are they fighting for? Leave me in the Matrix.
that's a
Okay, leave me in the Matrix.
that's an interesting spin. I'll give you that.
No, it's real, man, because you got to remember, it was all done at the same time. There's like no other point. That is the only point where they love. You also, that's where you get the weird, like, sex scene thing. The whole point is the theology of the scene makes so much sense. Your problem with it is probably execution.
Yeah. I mean, well, because to me, generally speaking with and I'm speaking very generally, but to me, generally
Generally.
speaking, execution is what matters at the end of the day, because that's what I see as a viewer. Like, you can have the greatest idea in
The
the
first time.
world. Well, I'm just saying, like, with any movie, like, execution is everything. Like, you can have the greatest idea in the world, but if you don't execute it well, who cares?
Well, true, but my thing is that, the thing with the execution of it is execution can be one of those things that you lack it because of the way that you perceived it, because there's a perception thing. You're talking
Sure.
about the
Oh,
subjectivity.
it's totally
All three of
subjective.
us
Like,
watch
don't get me
all these
wrong.
different well, yeah, no. But I'm saying, but if the true intent behind it is there, then the part where you lose people is the execution, but that also is kind of where the intent can bring people in. Like me, I hated that scene. I hated that scene so much that that was the one thing that I would be the first thing I would complain about. And then it took someone else to explain to me, like, kind of to really kind of think about the theology and everything there with the characters and everything you see. And when they laid it out there to me, and they were like, yeah, what's the point of living if life's like the way you see Zion every other time other than that particular scene? There's no point where they enjoy each other or themselves. And we know it's hard to fit that into that movie, the style that it is and everything. So it is kind of jarring, but you also kind of need it in a way. So, for telling that human part of the story. Anyway, we
Fair
talked too
enough.
much about the Matrix.
That's fine.